You can use that. Come on in, sit down. Oh, you doing music? I mean, music, no music. Say it? Yeah. I think we got enough microphones for 6 of us, or 8 of us.
Well, instead of the talking stick.
Right.
You ready?
We're ready.
Welcome to Signs of Destiny 2004, a workshop with Michael Langevin.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. I've given you all kipus, make your choice. But we're not going to start there. Come in. Thank you. Here. I ended the last one with ritual. When these are gone, the other people have to use their imagination, which will be good for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here.
Is someone sitting?
No, you are.
Save it, please.
The importance of ritual. I grew up in the Catholic Church. Anyone who's grown up in the Catholic Church is either brainwashed by my theories or a Reformed Catholic. And it's sort of like alcoholism. They often go hand in hand, actually. But the first time I went to Europe, I went to Notre Dame Cathedral at sunrise for High Mass. And I hadn't been in the Catholic Church for a long time. But when the incense were burning, and the music came up, and the choir sang, and the sun hit the Rosetta Stone, and the colors flashed across the cathedral, I was transported to another realm. The Catholics knew what they had before MTV. They knew how to play to the senses. But more than that, they knew the power that was gathered by focused prayer, focused intent, focused clarity of purpose, and they used this. It wasn't until Prue took over my life that I started realizing that spirituality and ritual were really good things and really powerful tools that can be used in your day-to-day life. How do you do a ritual? The Catholic Church always has it, in Latin. Well, they don't have it in Latin anymore, but it's always that extreme that you don't know where to start or where to get it, and most of the books on it tend to be either very shamanic or very witchcraft oriented. I took Witchcraft 101 with Laurie Cabot in Salem, Massachusetts, and danced with Starhawk in San Francisco. So I've been exposed to a few witches and know quite a few shamans firsthand. Some of them are so by the book and so what was handed down by their grandmothers. I've even had this argument with people who I respected greatly in Peru who believed that what they were taught, come in, bring a chair in, please. What they were taught is the only way, and that even maybe it can only be done by people of the blood. And I really respect their lineage, and I really respect their beliefs of that. You're more than welcome to join us in the circle. Okay. But my experience tells me different, that it is very powerful to take ayahuasca with an ayahuasca shaman who can sing to you when you are not in your body or in this reality and be your anchor. It is very powerful to have a paca or holy man do a ritual for you. Paco, thank you. We're going to get grammar correction here because I'm always off a little bit. It's just my nature. That will do a ritual very stylized to bring about your heart's desire or to bless your wedding or to bless your home. However, the most powerful rituals come from a place of intent, clarity of purpose, enthusiasm, desire, belief, expectations. And it works with, those things are pretty universal tools that the more you can use them in your life or in the world, the more you're going to get results. But in ritual, you can see radical results quickly. It's almost like the gods and goddesses, let me do it small aside, my cosmology has a creative force, and you can call it God, and Jesus is in there. I mean, I was raised a Catholic. I even, when I can't find lost things, I pray to St. Anthony from time to time, just because I was taught early on. It always seems to make it fire turn up faster. But in my cosmology, there's room for all of it. That every level is a level of spiritual evolution. Evolution in the deities or the wannabe deities or the can't avoid being deities path, so that we're all moving towards a level of consciousness. In my mind, Gaia or Gaia, as you choose to pronounce it, was once a much less sentinel being, and has evolved to the state that she has evolved of a spiritual essence that is taking care of all of us and helping us through this next step in our spiritual evolution. That the Incan gods and goddesses do exist, and they exist on an astral plane, and they don't compete with the Christian God and Abraham or with Nirvana for the Buddhists. They just exist there for their own enjoyment and for those who pray to them and those who want their helps. As a matter of fact, my experience of the astral planes is they are, like the earth, overpopulated with beings who are just really entertained by earth and really want some input into what we're doing. All you got to do is ask. You know, I mean, the Bible's not my favorite book. I read it to see what was going on. But there's some quotes in it that are just phenomenal. Please come in and join us, Norma. Can we just move over a little bit? Knock and the door shall be open. And it's so true. The problem is we don't ask. We don't think we deserve, or we don't think it's possible, or we don't think it's the way it's supposed to happen. And, you know, all of that is us needing to get out of our own way. As much as we can allow ourselves, and I'm living proof of that. I mean, in my book, I'm Horatio Alger, because, you know, I mean, my brothers and sisters are all very nice people, but none of them have done any of the things I've done, and I probably don't have the right to, but I wanted to with a burning desire, and I think I deserve it. And I've gotten, come on in, I've gotten just amazing adventures and wonderful life experiences, and you know, I get to run an international business that changes people's lives, because after a while the Inca gods beat me up enough, I wanted to. So bringing that back to religion, and again, I try not to bring too much of my paranoia into my workshops or lectures, but you can make a case that religions are set up to take our power away and give them to the priest or holy person, to the god or saints, to the ritual and doing it when and how they say, to being born in sin. Pardon me, I wasn't. I might have done a few fun ones since then, but I wasn't born in sin. And if we but they know what they did. Basically, at a certain point in humans' history, there were all sorts of crazy people running around preaching spirituality and healing people and doing miracles. And a couple of them said, if we could get a monopoly on that, we could rule the world. And damn right they are. And they had inquisitions and witch burnings and conquerings all over the universe. And we got a few major religions that most people, if you ask them what their spiritual beliefs are, say, well, I was taught when I was a kid. And that's really a lot in our society today. But in truth, spirituality, as I said in that previous thing, is a wide array with huge cosmologies. And ritual is a way to ask for help from any pantheon of gods or goddesses, any individual force. I'm going to go in depth until you people say uncle, about some of the beings that exist out there and how to communicate with them and how to bring them back into your life and how to avoid bringing some of them back into your life. I'll tell you some of those stories too. I wanted to hit a couple of points with the ritual that are just, to me, earth-shattering. And I learned it mostly by doing them. And it's sort of like, you got to believe, you know? I mean, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell weren't that far off, you know? If you don't believe, nothing exists and nothing can happen. And then you got to expect miracles to come from that believing. And if you do, they don't always come like you want, and they're never wrapped in the wrapping you wanted, but they come, and they come beautifully, and they come as often as you think you deserve them and can keep asking for them in creative ways. The universe and the spiritual entities don't seem to understand rote to me. I mean, maybe there's a place for, I want a miracle, I want a miracle, I want a miracle, but I don't think it's the same as, I want some help with a miracle here. I think you get a lot more results with that. I do tend to do loud, but it gets people's attention, it gets other deities' attention. It's, you know, I came from a family of 6. It was the only way you got seconds. and it works all these years later. My staff know when I'm there, and they know they're supposed to work twice as hard. And this thing here with an R in the center of our chest, you know, what black magicians do, black magicians run their energy from their solar plexus to their communication chakra. They run it right around the heart. And I'm going to confess to you, when I'm in the middle of supervising a staff, meeting a deadline, paying the bills, I have to be really careful not to do the same thing. Because it's really hard to fire somebody, especially the second person on a day, because you couldn't teach them to do their job and to think about the consequences in their life. And it's really hard to feel about how you're paying printers a lot more than you're paying writers, because that's the only way to run a business. And I have to really catch myself and run the energy through my heart with an R. And if you do that, it's like a magnifying glass. There's a meditation that you bring up the earth energy through your feet and the cosmic energy through your crown chakra, and you have them meet in the center of your heart. And there you roast them in a stew of magical burnings. And then you project it onto what you want. And it's messy. A lot of my magic tends to be messy. But you know, it's sort of like a compost. If you throw this shit out there and you let it rot well, then you get this really rich, fertile soil, and you can grow anything in it. And magic's that way too. And focus. You know, I mean, I'm as bad as other people. I get discouraged, and walk away from projects that are half finished. But when I can bring myself back, before my first book came out, I wrote 25 books that are half finished in my garage. None of them were good enough for me or anyone else, and I just kept stopping before I finished. And one day I'll go back and finish the better ones, but it wasn't the right time, and I needed to get the right focus for the right book to come forward that would mean something to me in the world. Giving yourself permission to make mistakes, even in ritual and magic, boy, okay, let's do the mistake one. And the dark entities, okay. So, I'm reading this old tomb from the Middle Ages, and it tells me I can bring forward demons. Hey, now this is interesting. Do demons really exist? I don't give a lot of, channels tend to come in all flavors, and most of them tend to come in bad flavors as far as I'm concerned. But one of them once said, and I don't really like the channel, that he looked for the devil and Satan, and he looked at the ends of the universe, and he looked in the center of the earth, and he looked every place he could think, and the only place he found them was in the hearts and the minds of the people who believed in them. So I always went on that premise, and then I was reading this book, and they were getting all these results, bringing out all these demons who were doing all these neat things for him, and I said, well, you know, a little gray magic might be all right. So, and I'm curious, what do demons look like anyway? Well, I could write a book. I brought them forth, and my life got really miserable, and they wouldn't let me sleep at night, and they were in my dreams, and I got short with people, and I was nasty, and finally, and I generally reach that place, You get the last, Kepu. I didn't really know how many people were coming. And finally I stood up and I said, "Be gone. I made a mistake. I believe in good and in healing and in love, and you creatures believe in none of that. I don't want anything from you. I'm sorry I ever asked you in my life. Be gone. Never bother me again." And then I did every spell and prayer and ritual I could think of. And it stopped. And I'm much more powerful for the experience. But I'll never go back there unless there's a real good reason. There's all kinds of beings out there that you can bring into your life. And the more, if you choose the path of magic, and you can choose it to whatever degree. I mean, I give this lecture in bookstores, and I talk about how people can use magic to make their jobs more meaningful, even if they're not meaningful jobs. How I use angels to help me file my papers because I'm so bad at filing papers. You know, how I turn washing dishes into a powerful ritual to get out all the blockages that are standing in the way of my growth. So you can, and it's great. Any Catholic, Buddhist, Muslim can use it in this. I was in a workshop with a Jain not long ago. She was just the most amazing woman. She wasn't a fundamentalist Jain because they run around basically naked in the woods of northern India. But she brought, her father had been, and she was still practicing their beliefs. I learned so much from her. She had no problem with my beliefs. She had lots of questions about them. It was a real lovely give and take. In any level, in running a business, raising teenagers, doing magic, you make mistakes, you have setbacks, you have failures. You can only do your best. You're never going to grow if you're afraid of those things. I love my business. I love my work. It's really allowed me to touch so many lives and I think make the world a better place. I made a whole series of mistakes. Not me alone, but I was the main man. And we went bankrupt. I was a failure. That was my worst fear. And if I didn't think I was a failure, my mother-in-law sure thought I was a failure. And she let me know still to this day that I went bankrupt and I was a failure. And what it did was it forced me down into my rituals and my basic beliefs and my basic practices, and I just prayed for a miracle. And when I got to the bankruptcy judge, he said, "If you can reform your business and show me a plan that's going to make it a viable business, I'll let you go forward with it." And the lawyer turned to me and said, "They never say that." And my business partner, who we had done our thing, walked away and sold me his part for almost nothing. The debt was gone. And I got to redesign the magazine the way I always wanted to and have it surge in circulation and now have 3 magazines. It's good to make mistakes. It's good to have failures. It's good to have setbacks. They're not fun. They're never fun. We don't want them. We want to avoid as many, and we want to spare our children from ever having them. When my daughter came home and the boy she fell in love with didn't love her, her first boy, I cried with her. I didn't want her to go through that. I'm sure it was a plan and it was good for her in the long run. When I'm in nature, and I try to be in nature, we live in the country. I moved my family to the country, and I try to be in nature most days. I say a prayer, and I say, may I be at one with the elements, nature, and my environment. May I work in harmony with them and accomplishing my assigned task and joyously in the divine design. And for me, you know, that's all we can do. We can dance. If you make a mistake, you make a wrong step, you know, your dance partner might not notice, and if they do, they might laugh. Fear and death are 2 of the worst enemies in any ritual, in any magic. We all have fear. It's very powerful. When I was mugged and almost killed in Veracruz, it was my fear that kept me alive and allowed me to walk away from it. Thank God for fear and all the gods and goddesses at that moment in time. But my fear of commitment kept the magazine from being all it could for its early years of its existence. My fear of commitment in relationships kept me from having a relationship for longer than 1 or 2 years until I met the woman I married. My fear of raising children could have kept the best spiritual teachers I ever had in my life away if I didn't find a way I could compromise with the universe and make it all right to have children. If they didn't have to carry on my dysfunctional bloodline, then I could help some kids from some other country, and Peru made itself the country, of course. Wasn't my plan to adopt from Peru, I didn't think. Facing our fears, embracing our fears is the most powerful things. Acknowledging them is the hard thing, to find them and to know, oh, this is a fear, and I hadn't been looking at it, and I need to make it mine somehow. I hated white picket fences, and when I got married, I was behind a white picket fence, and it was like, okay, thank you, universe. And I hated cutting lawns. I swore after I moved off my family's farm as a kid that I'd never cut a lawn again. And now when I bring in the lawnmowers to be fixed, they say, do you run a landscaping company? Because we have so many lawns on the farm. Be careful what you don't like or say you'll never do. It's really, that's as powerful as drawing to you what you like. Death. My father and grandfather were funeral directors. I went to embalming funeral director school, Gupton's funeral directing school in Nashville, Tennessee. And I like to look at it now as the initiation of the Egyptian priests who had to work with the dead bodies. At the time, I thought, well, you know, it's a family business. Someone's got to take it over. I'll make a lot of money. I walked out one night. I was embalming bodies by myself in the biggest funeral home in Nashville. And it was my last semester at embalming school. And they had the poorest person in the city and one of the richest people. Well, I don't know if he was the poorest. He was off the streets. Nobody knew his name. He was John Doe. And one of the richest people. And I had them both there, as coincidence would have it. And I washed down the bodies and did the embalming. And I smoked cigars because the smell was so bad at that point in time. It's not something I've done before or since. But I took my cigar and I went to the bathroom. And when I came back, I looked at the two bodies. And I couldn't figure out which one was which. And it was like a lightning bolt. I said, so I'm going to be a rich funeral director burying people all my life. And it doesn't make any difference to anyone when it's all said and done, except me. I'm not going to be a funeral director. I'm going to find meaningful work. I tell that story because it was life-changing for me. And dancing with the gypsies in the Nashville funeral home once a year was very life-changing for me. But to grow up with death, to live across the street from the funeral home, to have coffee and donuts and say, hey, Dad, who's this? In the funeral home after church on Sunday, one makes death their ally. And as an ally, it's the most, fear and death, for me, are the most powerful allies I've ever had, and I've had some pretty powerful allies. Because if I have fear on my right-hand shoulder and death on my left, then I am obligated to make the most out of every moment of my existence, to give you all I have, to write the best I have when I write, to supervise my staff the best I can, to laugh as often as I can. And if I think, no, I'm too tired, I just look over to my left, and Des says, fine, you can come sleep with me anytime. You will do that eventually. And I say, not so tired, back on track, can do this. And when I say, I don't really think I want to call that advertiser that we have a bad relationship with because somebody else goofed it up as a publisher, because what if I goof it up, we lose all, and I look on my right shoulder and I say, good for the business, good for everybody who reads the magazine. Hi, how you doing? I'm the publisher. And generally just with that intent, it works. Those are the things and persistence. You know, I've done a ritual that I was taught by someone or read or just knew was supposed to work and got nothing. Black space. Don't need the void. Bend to the void. So I did it again. And then I did it again. And then I did it again. And then I got results. Why was it the 5th time, the 6th time? Come up, there's a room, there's space right here, that it worked. I don't know. Did it work? Yeah. Was it really powerful when it did? Yep. Would any sane person have not done it in the first place? Given up by the 4th try? Probably. Bob Monroe of the Monroe Institute, who wrote 3 wonderful books on astral traveling, and they teach a very scientifically based thing. He used to spend hours documenting his out-of-the-body experiences. And he'd come back and he'd write for hours about this whole thing. And in one of those he wrote, "People are beginning to think I'm crazy." Now, he would spend hours laying in bed, telling people he was out of his body, coming back writing about what was on the 24th dimension. Of course they thought he was crazy. Someone's at the door. Okay. And he was. It's only crazy people that do great things, in my mind, in the world. That's it, you know. Madness and genius are the same side of the coin. They just aren't always recognized as such. Meanwhile, back at ritual. Once you've got all these pieces in line, for me, you take what's important and meaningful to you. When I'm in Peru, I love using coca leaves, just because coca isn't cocaine. It's a healthy supplement. It gives you extra energy. I can get up in the morning and chew coca leaves and write for 4 hours and then still tour Peru with my family all day and be normal. They're a holy plant in my book. But here I use bay leaves, I use sage, because, you know, if I brought in coca leaves, I wouldn't be here, I'd be in jail. And they work just as good. You know, I have to say, okay, it's not a coca leaf, it's a bay leaf. I'm transforming it. You know, it works for wine. Why not? Why not for coca leaf, bay leaves? I keep an altar in the corner of my office, in the corner of my room, in my garage. If it takes up too much room in my house, I move it to the garage, and it's not over. And I put on there anything that's important to me. When I'm at a place and there's a special event, I pick up a rock. When I'm at the seashore visiting my mom once a year in Cape Cod, I pick up a seashell. When I'm at Machu Picchu, I pick up a little rock. You're not supposed to, so a little rock that doesn't look like it belongs to anything. I have a pine cone from the White Mountains. I have a pebble from the river in Budapest. Just important things to me. And they have energy. Energy is just really important in ritual. And you generate energy by things that bring feeling for you. That's why they use incense, music, whatever. I mean, sometimes I play the Impossible Dream while I'm doing my rituals, just because that's it. That's what I'm doing. You know, I'm transforming the world. I named one of our horses Dulcinea because she's the perfect woman. She's scared of me. She runs away. But hey, the idea was there. But music that inspires you, smells that make you feel magical or powerful. I mean, you know, I don't care. Ivory soap was used always in my house growing up. I've used ivory soap in a ritual just because it brought back that feeling I wanted to create in my house at that time, and I wanted to center on that feeling. All the senses that you can bring in for ritual, the more powerful it makes it. Smelling, sound, sight, energy, feeling. Depending on the time of day, when I'm doing the next day, I might have a shot of brandy, I might have a glass of wine, I might just drink water. If it's early in the morning, I have to get going. I've done a lot of rituals with coffee. It's your ritual. And then, you know, I've recited from the I can't even say it, Bhagavad Gita. And I've read from the Quran. I've read from other books. Sometimes I pull a book off the wall and say, gee, I'm not really sure what this ritual needs. And I open it up and I start, you know, reading something on balancing a balance sheet in a business and say, okay, this means something in this ritual, but usually it's more focused than that. But the more we can draw on our rich tapestry. And then my problem at the beginning with ritual is I always wanted to change the whole world and maybe get Mars in the process. And it's better to start small and do baby steps so you can see your successes. When I first was teaching myself to astral travel, I wanted to go to the Vatican Library really bad. And I just couldn't astral travel at all. Then I said, I'd like just to get out of my body. And I found myself down the hall, scared to shit, and running back to my body as fast as I could. But it worked because I set small. It's really scary the first time you're out, in most cases, unless you do a lot of reading or are well-trained. It just feels really different. So you start small. And even if you've conquered the world last week or last year and you haven't done it recently or things are getting overwhelming, it's good to start small and to go back up. You laugh. It's hard going through a bankruptcy. You know, you have $1 million business and you go through a bankruptcy. You go, who am I? And what's ritual mean to me now? It's a good experience. Humbling, I don't know if I got humble yet. I'm still working on humble. Then sometimes I script them out beforehand, and when I've done them with other people, I've spent whole days scripting out the ritual with other people. You know, okay, there's going to be 13 of us, and this person's going to read from John Muir, and this person's going to read from Starhawk, and this person's going to read their favorite Buddhist, and then we're all going to visualize a spiral, and then we're going to make a protective circle. And doing that, a whole room has transported over and brought back a miracle. So you can do it that way, and it does work. I've sat by myself with my journal. I find that if you read much stuff about magicians and sorcerers and stuff, they generally write down their spell book, or they have names for the witches have the Book of the Moon or the Book of the Darkness. Or, there's a bunch of names for it, and basically, for me, it's a journal. I mean, I just try to write, and there goes weeks I don't write, but I try to write something exciting in my journal most days. Sometimes I'm just purging because I hate my staff because they won't do anything I want them to do. And if I put it on paper, I can be a better supervisor the next day rather than be mean to them. And other times, you know, it's poetry. But if you write, I write down, you know, a lot of times my ritual. And then other times I'm real spontaneous and just what's coming in and what needs to come forth. And I set, you know, it depends on how important it is. I set 1, 2, or 3 goals generally, and focus the ritual. I can't, again, I think if you run the energy this way, you can, but I can't make other people do what I want in supervision or in my family or in ritual. People all have their own path. Khalil Gibran said, children are like an arrow. You get to point them, but then you have to let them go, and they find their own path. And I think that's true of people you supervise, and I think it's true of ritual. The more specific you can get in visualizing what the outcome's going to feel like, look like, taste like, smell like, the better you are. I once visualized a nice beach cottage in the Richmond district of San Francisco to enjoy the summer in. Found it, subletted it. It had 57 long steps up to it that really wore me down, and the sun never came out all summer long. I forgot a couple of details. The universe will give you what you ask for. What you don't ask for, clear out, it will fill in the blanks. And that's where it gets very interesting. You can go back and try to redo certain aspects of it, but, you know.
I actually just moved out of a house in the Richmond district of San Francisco, and I had written an intention, and everything came through the intention of my writing, but the fill in the blanks were scary.
Yeah.
And I just moved out of there 2 days ago.
That's kind of uncanny. I moved to the Haight-Ashbury, and we started Magical Blend there. So that worked real well. But yeah, I always remember that was a lesson in visualization and ritual that didn't quite work the way I had intended. I have used ritual to break curses on my son, which came because a sorcerer was mad at me. When you dabble in magic, it comes on many levels. I have used it to make our garden grow better tomatoes. I use it often on the business because I'm such a interesting businessman. We won't call me that I need ritual to make it work. It's an all-utility tool. I mean, it's better than a Swiss Army knife, which come in real handy in rituals. As is above, so is below. The Incas believed that whatever you did in this realm happened in the world of the dead. The exact same thing, and that's why the Day of the Dead is such a wonderful experience in Peru, because you have, in many, the only slightly better to do families have glass in the front of their crypts, and inside the glass they put the child's favorite toy. They put in the soup of their husband that was his favorite. They have musicians playing to them. They have priests praying their favorite prayers, and it's still believed to this day that all goes across and is happening in the realm of the dead. Well, it is. That's the good news and the bad news. What we do mirrors in other realms. I once went on a ketamine trip, and I really don't do drugs anymore. I got that mostly out of well, I don't not do drugs. Once a year or so I'll do something, but just to remember that I can. But right, yeah, it's special rituals you need to be altered. But I barely do drugs. I mean, compared to what I used to, I don't. And I don't use any of the mundane ones. But I did ketamine one time. Dr. Lilly was very espousing of this substance. And it's very good with a group. You all astral travel to the same places. And you can come back and compare notes. So it's real proof of all of this stuff I'm talking about. So I had to try it, but it was just me, and I got lost because I was so messed up. So when I came back into my body for a minute, I ran out and I grabbed a tree in the yard. For my good fortune, that tree grew in most astral planes. And it was my guide for the rest of the night. And just, that tree and I are still the best buds. I mean, we are just really, it might be gone now if it wasn't, it's in a bad place, it's not really, but I cannot hurt that tree. So certain things from now and here exist on the other planes, and if you intend them to, you really can. Scary story, lovely story, side trip story. My father died 2 years ago, and my dad and I had a rough childhood with my dad, and he and I became friends with a lot of effort on our parts as he grew older, and I really missed him. And I kept having these dreams of him being in a really bad place. So I called up a friend who, I can do astral traveling, but I have to not be working that week or really have a burning thing. I can't go like that and show you my astral body down the road. Or tell you what they're having for dinner down in the restaurant. I can't do that usually anyway because the mundane doesn't work for me. So I called someone who I know who can, and I said, my dad's coming to me in dreams and I can't seem to help him and I'm concerned. So the next morning I got a call back and the guy said, so does he look a little bit like you, only has a pencil bar mustache and a little bit shorter and hunched over? I said, yeah, that's my dad. And he said, yeah, he had locked himself in this cell, and he was beating himself, and he kept saying, I did terrible things in my life. I did terrible things in my life. So I looked at him and I said, hey, I'm a friend of Michael's. You did one great thing in your life. That overcomes all the bad things. And bingo, he was gone. So when I had time and energy that I could focus in that way, I went and I found him in a Christian Catholic heaven. My theory is that whatever you believe in this realm, you create. Whatever you believe in that realm, you create. So if you believe you're going to pray with Jesus, you are. And ain't nothing wrong with it at all, because Jesus is all right with most people. And that's where he was. He was in a Catholic heaven, and he was praying with Jesus, and he was happy as could be, and we had a really nice conversation, and he made me promise. He promised that he would open up to my view of realities on the other realities if I come back, and I promised I would. It's possible to that degree. You can't always do it yourself. It's good to have a network of friends or associates that you can kind of call on, but to that degree, our beliefs create our reality and keep creating our reality, I think. One time I was hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountains and wanted to do a ritual and didn't have anything with me but my backpack and my sleeping bag and some granola, and just started climbing pine trees and jumping from one pine tree to the other because they were really close. It was kind of safe. It made me feel really strong, and I was howling because there was no one around, and I was shouting all these things that I wanted to have happen and begging all of the gods and goddesses and allies to come and help me. And it really was a powerful ritual. And it was one of the more far out ones I ever did. And I had none of my usual implements or altars or any of that stuff. It's that way. You can make it really. The implements, the magical tools are very, very effective because they're reservoirs of magical energy. In some places in Peru, there's a tradition, and they use a magic crystal. They wouldn't call it that. That would be. They use a crystal, a quartz crystal, not a big one, and the shaman energizes it through his life, and then as he's getting near death, he sews it into the arm of his apprentice, his chosen successor. That person does the same thing, and when he dies, his apprentice cuts it out and sews it into his arm. And these have been passed down for many generations in certain areas because they're reservoirs of magical energy. And any energy. Why do we have ghosts? Well, we have ghosts for a lot of reasons. But we have ghosts because some people go to work every day the same place and have an emotional attachment to it, and they can't stop repeating it when they die. We have ghosts because they were killed unexpectedly in Iraq and they don't know they're dead and don't want to leave or can't leave. We have ghosts because they have some unfinished work that they want to do and they don't know how to get it done in the form they're in.
Or we hold them.
We very much can. A lot of times couples, one dies and the other one can't live without them, so they don't. So that's just another case of energy and the effect it has on us and on magical things. If you have a knife that you always use to cut away the bad, and you just see it that way, well, that knife picks up a lot of that energy after you've used it for years. If you have a chalice that you always drink your sacred substance out of when you're doing a ritual, and say, I'm taking in the blood of Mother Earth, or I'm taking in the cosmic energies of the heaven, that picks up that energy. Each one of these, and you can have the widest array, and they can be as simple. My first magic wand was, I pulled it out of a dumpster because I was late for someone who was going to teach me how to have a magical wand, and it was a geranium plant. It was just one branch of the geranium plant, and I used it, I painted on it, I used it for years, and then a friend died, who I had done a lot of magic with. He died of AIDS, and I went and I put it on his grave, and you know, if that damn thing didn't become a geranium plant again, it's magic. I mean, it wasn't even my intent. I was just giving something that was meaningful to me, and sometimes that's all you got to do. I'm going to go on to the allies because there's no closing to ritual. For me, it's a never-ending story. Use it, like I said, make mundania a ritual. When it's my turn to wash the dishes, I got to clean out the barn. Come on, I'm too important for this stuff. When it's my turn to bring out the trash, then I make it a ritual. God, we all collect a lot of trash in our psyches, in our spirits, in our houses, and let's throw it out. Because when you empty your closet and give it to Goodwill in the winter, not only do you keep other people warm, but you make room for nicer clothes to come in. and it's true on every level. When you get rid of this, there's a lot of things we do, say, ways we act that worked when we were in high school or grammar school, and we were told they were cute or something, and we don't see them anymore, and we haven't looked at them, and we're still doing them. And if we take an itinerary of what we do, we go, you know, that doesn't work anymore. I'm not 19. And that's what we have to do on every level. And so use ritual on that basic level of washing dishes, bringing out the trash. Filing papers. One day I will either hire a secretary or learn to file papers. But until then, I will file my papers, and I will have angels and elves helping me do it, and entities from other realms. And when I'm in the right mood, it's even fun. And play with it, because magical tools are best, no matter how serious they are, when you play with them, and you can get them out to the next level. Are there any questions on ritual before I go on to allies? Allies. Carlos Castaneda used the term and brought it into a certain number of our psyches in a certain way. Victor Sanchez told me not long ago that he had contacted Carlos's Blue Scout on another astral plane, and this doesn't mean anything to anyone who hadn't read Carlos Castaneda's books. But it was a big find, and it was a huge ally that Castaneda brought back and had an amazing relationship with. And Castaneda was a great storyteller, and in some of his books he tells the stories of desert monsters coming out and bugs taking on huge forms, and either, you know, doing an exorcism on them or making them allies. Not an exorcism, but getting them out of or making them allies, and trying not to wet his pants in the process. Those exist. And if you look at the spiritual realms like New York, Mexico City, Paris, Rome, Beijing and Tokyo and Bombay all thrown together, now you're getting a feel for my view of it. There's so many entities and so many layers and so many beings, and some never come to Earth and won't do anything you ask under any circumstances, and others are floating on your shoulder right now and are waiting for you to ask them. Their life is dedicated to helping you out. Most of us, you know, the Catholics call them guardian angels. The shamanic tradition calls them spirit guides. Most of us have minimal to, usually, in my case, I'm sure it's a dozen at least that have kept me alive, never mind going forward. The risks I've taken have been really silly, and I should stop sometime, maybe. But they're out there on every level. The angels weren't invented by the Christians. They existed long before the Catholic Church ever was thought of. They're in the Babylonian cuneiforms, and they existed long before that. And they're real good allies. The voodoo priests know about the Hogans and how to bring in the entities. And these entities, I mean, work in really strange ways with magical blend. I've met some voodoo priestesses and priests that I've learned things from, and I've just talking about them kind of raises the hair on the back of my neck in a couple of cases. Their magic is real. It's in the gray zone, but it can be really positive, really powerful. And those entities, you know, some entities they're sort of like a wild stallion. You know, you have to kind of move with them. And other entities become just, you know, there's a group the old magicians used to use called sifs. They're basically, yes? Yeah. And they're basically wannabe humans who exist. They're kind of monkey-like, ghost-like beings who, you know, all you got to do is tell them you love them, and they're yours for life. And if you tell them, and I'll do whatever I can to see if I can knock you into reincarnated and as a human at some point. Oh my God. And they're nice beings, and they'll go tell you where there's a book you were looking for that you can't find on the internet, or where you left your keys for your car, or, you know, if Joe's really working in the office when you took a day off, just all kinds of things. It's a matter of deciding who you're comfortable with or who you'd like to get to know. There's a more progressive, and I am going to do more progressive. Someone tell me when we get to like, it goes to 3:15, so 3 o'clock, so I can know where I'm mumbling to. Anyone have a watch?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Ages we've got. You'll be overflowing. Yes?
Can we just stand?
Oh, please, please. I don't do physical. I'm sorry. And then after I go into the allies a little bit, we'll bring it back to the KPUs just because they're a real basic life-changing tool that really work.
Will you tell us how you get your allies?
Yes, that's where I'm going. Anyone lead these things?
Jump in.
Sure. You just moved out of Richmond. Huh. Huh.
The International UFO Congress, bless him.
Yeah, really. Come on in. Yeah.
All right. I forgot about that one. There you go.
Yeah, I was,
You know, I'm tensing up really hard.
well, my purse carrying
taller.
shoulder.
Oh, wait, no, you gotta come over here though.
We gotta make this turn. Rotate around just a little.
Okay, 2 more minutes because I get tired if I'm not talking.
You can talk. Go ahead.
That's true. Okay. Thank you all. So how do you get allies? The question comes up. The same way you get a job. That's it. Okay. Well,
We might know we have allies, but we wouldn't know how you got yours.
well, I could go on and on, but let me see. When I was really young, we lived across the funeral home, across the street from the cemetery, and it's New England, so there were some very old graves. And I was a funeral director kid, so I'm a very mischievous guy. And they used to come in, and they used to come in with the bulldozers in the winter and dig up the earth to bury the bodies. And they'd often catch old coffins and pull up stuff. So I'd collect some of the loose bones. So I had an aquarium in my room that had loose bones from the cemetery in it. And one night, I had this dream. And one of the tombstones was Phineas Goodhue. And he had a poem on it. Stop, my friends, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I, as I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me. Well, Phineas and the other souls whose bones I had taken to my room decided it wasn't good, and they were going to show me. So they showed me all sorts of things that night, and I buried the bones the next day. And Phineas hung around for a long time. I only call him now on special occasions, but Phineas, you know, I had done what he asked, and in return, Phineas would do things for me. The first time I did mushrooms back in 1960-something, I was in a forest grove, and one of the leaves started moving, and I went over and moved it, and there was an elf behind it. And pretty soon there was a group of elves that were kind of dancing. I was kind of dancing with them, and when the mushrooms wore off, they were still dancing. And I said, well, it didn't wear off. And I went back the next day, and they were still dancing. And I was functioning as normally as I did in the world at that time. And you know, those elves became allies as nature spirits. You know, it's asking a lot of times. With the more powerful ones, it's doing a ritual, and if I can't get there by the astral traveling, getting there by intent or imagination, and being there with and saying, I call forth a desert ally who's good at making things dry because, you know, it looks like there's going to be a flood and I don't want it to affect me or anyone that I care about. So you have the power. The first time, one of the times I almost died, I had a clear energy that there was, you know, an angel with brown wings that was floating around me. And I, being humble as I am, I called him Michael. And I talked to him regularly. You know, it's getting a feeling, going with a feeling. A lot of the energies are so subtle that you kind of have to say, well, that's my imagination. But, you know, you revisit them enough times, it's like, maybe I created it. But it's real now. And if I've been living in delusion, it's quite a few decades. And it works well. So don't take away my delusions. Right? I went into human services because I was sure they were going to lock me up, and I wanted to know where the keys were. Once I got that, I got to be a full-time publisher. So you really can just call them from anywhere. The dead want to help those they love. My second grade teacher belonged to the Theosophical Society. She's 93 now, and I have to visit her when I go home at Christmas, so she gets really mad at me. And she said the book was very good, but the last issue of my magazine, I really could have had a little more depth to it. But she used to tell me stories that when she went to Alaska for the first time and was scared, she called on her aunt. And her aunt came and introduced her to all these people. Now, she said, I never saw my aunt, but I knew she was there. And I was meeting all these interesting people. And before that, I wasn't meeting anyone. You know, anyone can do it. I mean, I gave you, making her sound like a metaphysical, and she's a really wonderful woman, but she taught basic second grade all her life. She was a second grade teacher, basically. And that's magical in itself. Anyone who can, I taught kindergarten for a little while, and that's a lot harder than publishing magazines. And you can call the dead. Should we do the dead or the kepu? We can do either. The kepu? Kepu? Okay. It is this thing that some people have. There's more people than I thought, and I apologize to users that don't have it. Do I? No. Did I drop some in here? No, that's the cord to my. I'm sorry. No, I think I gave out all I had. I think. Yeah. Sorry, but that's what we're going to do. First, background. The kepu, this is good. The kepu was the magical tool that all the anthropologists and archaeologists agree on, that they kept records in Peru. And some say that they tied knots. It was not just on a stick like this. It was long ropes of knots. They kept records. And some say they counted llamas in villages, and they kept records of how much corn was grown. But there was a renegade monk who sent back stuff to the Vatican Library, and some of his stuff was lost in Switzerland. And he says it was a non-written language, that the knots represented words and letters, and that they had told their stories, and not just reminded themselves of stories, but kept track of everything just like we do, only they had made a different. This is how non-linear and non-Western their magic was. It was just hard for us to stretch to, that they wrote in knots. It's hard for me to stretch to. I can't write in pen. It's hard to read if I write in pen. So, why do we have it? Because I'm a big goal setter. I just always set goals. Got it early on in life. My father was a goal setter. And I think it's a really powerful tool. Didn't know it was magic until I heard it in the magic tradition. But I went to a village in Peru, and the kids had something that looked a little like this. It was more twiny. And they were tying knots. And I got someone to translate from Quechuan that, what were you doing? We're getting rid of the bad things, and we're bringing in the good things. How do you do that? So this is magic taught by children. Grandma told us how to do that. You take one side and you make it the past, and you tie a knot for the biggest thing you want to get rid of. I no longer want to get frustrated when my staff doesn't do what I think they should do. I don't want to fight with the people I love. I don't want to procrastinate. I don't want to be so disorganized that it makes more work than it saves. Whatever it is, you tie a knot for it. And you can add strings to these. You can make your own. You can make, I've just proven to myself it worked, and I didn't get rid of everything, I'll confess. But I tied 100 knots on it, you know. Then, when you've done, and you can make one of these for the past and one for the future, but then you take those two strings, and you cut them off. After you've done this, and you've put, you pick the time. I find a week doing every night a knot and reminding myself of what they are is pretty powerful because we're tied into the Gregorian calendar. I'm sure the Incas did not use a week. They might have used a wink. But you tie the knots for the past, you energize them. I want to get rid of my job. I want to get rid of this old friend that's become a pain. I want to get rid of my bad habits. And then you burn them. And as you burn them, you say, my past no longer exists. I claim all the energy that I left in my past. My bad habits and bad lifestyles and bad choices are transformed. I bring forward all of the best of what might have been and what is on some other level, and I bring it to now to re-energize my spiritual self and my dreams of the future. Then you take the other strings and you start tying the knots that replace it with. Instead of being disorganized, I'm now going to organize my papers every Friday at the end of work. Instead of arguing with people I love, I'm going to count to 10 each time I start and feel my heart. Instead of complaining that I have to change the toilet paper in the staff bathroom, I'm going to change it with love and just remind other people that we all work here. Those kind of things. And as grand as I'm going to write a best-selling book that changes lives all over the world. And it's coming to me right now. It's better to make them in the present. I am doing. It works either way, but it's more powerful because if I'm going to do it next year, it's always next year. It's most powerful if you do it with enthusiasm. I am bringing this into my life now. And then if you can visualize while you do it. And the more times you go back to these knots, the better for the first period of time. But then you have to stop. You can do it for a month. You can do it, you can set yourself a time. I'm going to do it for 2 months. I'm going to do it for a week. But then you take it and you put it aside. You don't burn it. You put it aside. I say, and my dreams are coming to me now, and I have to go work on them, so mote it be. That's not Quechuan. But it works for me. You say what energizes for you, and then you try just to take whatever actions that towards it, because there's a certain level of letting it incubate in the spiritual realm so it can come back. Because if you worry it, it's sort of like in a garden. When I first started teaching my kids to grow things, they kept pulling them up and say, it's not growing fast enough. And it's the same thing with visualizations and goal setting in the K-pool. If we do that, very, very powerful. I have found it works really good with kids and even high school kids. Get into it. It's a great tool to give them. I gave it to some of my children's friends who were having a hard time. They just loved it. And they can make it. And start small. You know, the best-selling book has to come after a few books that are out. The first one doesn't get to be the bestseller. You know, you visualize you finish writing a book and get it published. You visualize, you know, you argue once less a week. Very powerful tool. One day, I think we'll be able to go to the astral realms and figure out exactly how the K-poo was used, because there's not enough in existence. They've actually done comparisons, and it's hard for them. Some people think the weavings have some of that element in it, because each village had its own weavings, but they haven't been able to find it. I'm not sure that's not it. I had a dream last week. Pachacute was lecturing me, as he does, and I had never thought this thought. So, and I'm very creative, but there's over 100 kinds of corn and potatoes. And he told me, and I haven't done any experiment. I mean, I love them when I go down there to have the different kinds of corn. Some potatoes taste like sugar, some taste like sawdust. I don't eat those too much, but a lot of people do because you freeze them. They're freeze-dried in the Andes. They're naturally freeze-dried, but they taste like sawdust. I don't like them. He said if you mix different combinations of the corn and potatoes together, that they have different effects on your physical body, mental body, and spiritual body. And he also said, and I'm just giving you this straight from Dream. I haven't done any experimentation. It's pretty off the wall. But that if you make a stew, next time I'm down there for a week, of llama, guinea pig. I'm a vegetarian except when I'm in Peru. Llama, guinea pig, quinoa, blue corn, and purple potatoes, and eat that for a week, that your whole body and spirit and mind will be transformed. I mean, guinea pigs are great. When first time I went down there, I was on the train going from Arequipa to Puno, and I was I mean, I couldn't afford the train, but it was cold and I needed to get somewhere. So I was in baggage with the chickens and the pigs. It was the only lowest cost ticket you could. And this old, poor, very poor guy was back there, and after a while he came to me in very broken Spanish, and my Spanish was even worse, and he said, it's Christmas Eve. Where are you going to stay tonight? And I said, I don't know. And he said, come home with me. My family will love it. I said, really? And he brought me up into the mountains. And they were a very, very poor family. He had gone to Arequipa to make money. And because it was Christmas, they had llama and guinea pig as the feast. It was the first time I had ever eaten llama or guinea pig. I didn't realize that people ate llama or guinea pig. It was great. I hadn't hardly eaten in weeks and weeks, and it was tremendous. Ever since then, I have a taste for guinea pig. It's really better with peanut sauce on it. True story. But when we'd go to the villages, when my family was down there, we'd go to the villages, if an outsider comes and they can afford it, they insist on feeding you guinea pigs. Sometimes if it's a poor village, only a half or a quarter, and my family liked those better. But they would be very polite, and they would take a bite out of the guinea pig and pass it down to me. So I would have to eat 4 guinea pigs really fast, so nobody thought we were impolite in these villages. So I ate lots of guinea pig. And llama and alpaca are full of nutrients and wonderful things, especially for women. They make in Cusco, they make a alpaca skewer barbecue. It's that and a pisco sour. I could sit there for weeks. Yeah, pisco. Yeah. Then I could just, then I can float home. So guinea pigs and llama and food. It was a sidetrack from the Quepus. Basically, very powerful tool. Goal setting, very powerful. And another one that goes with it is future telling. One of the things that I heard one of the healers do in one of the village was tell each one. It was in Quechuan, so I had to have it. I'm learning a little Quechuan, but translated. But tell everyone how they were going to be when the soup took effect, or when, tomorrow you're going to feel a little better. The next day you're going to feel so good. You're going to be helping your father harvest all those potatoes. And darn if they weren't out there doing it. And, I asked, well, how come what made you think to do that? She said, oh, my grandmother told me, and she said her grandmother told her. I believe the ancient Incas, before going into a battle, would sit around the fire and say, we've never conquered a village on the top of a mountain like this before. When we conquer this, we're going to be famous all over the empire. And they're going to give up. We're not going to have to kill hardly any of them. And we're going to be brave warriors. And it's going to be easy and fast. We can go home in 2 days. And by future telling what you want to have happen to other people, or even to yourself, you're setting the heavens. You're making a pathway as to how the energies will flow. And you can use that on anything. I used it with my daughter in her biology test before I left. It was Friday morning. She was having a biology test she was worried about. And I said, Sophia, remember the last biology test you took? You did great. This one's a little harder. I know when I come home on Sunday, you're going to say, got an A+ in a biology test. I will not. I won't get better than a B. I said, maybe you'll say you got a B+. Maybe I was mixed up. What do you think? She said, yeah, probably a B. I recruited her. I bet she gets a B or not, because that's what she believed she was going to get. We can do that for ourselves and for others. Our beliefs, desires, and expectancies, just like And the thing is, we start using this stuff, everyone. I've seen the most powerful people that I'm in awe of and will be forever. And we either get blasé, or we get caught up in it, or we get scared of it, or we get tired, or we forget, and we stop. And things start getting a little off, and then a little more off, and then if you remember, you go back and you pick it up and say, oops, back to basics, and you start using what works for you again. And if you don't, you go to a bankruptcy before you do that. So, yep, please.
So when you cut off the one that you set aside, what is our eventual, do we do anything with it?
No, you basically, what I do with them, eventually I do burn them because I like to burn things. And it clears out the energies in the past. So when I've achieved a number of the things that I set in there, and the others just seem like they're lifetime goals, I either move the lifetime goals to a new one, or I just burn it and say, now my future is manifest, just so that I don't go back and worry it. Because sometimes I find myself, I still don't have that bestseller yet. And you just keep going back for something, whatever it is, and I've done it on every level. Okay, the dead. To call the dead is as simple as talking to your dog. However, ritual is very powerful in crossing through the veil. There are many rituals in Peru, in the northern part of Peru especially, yeah, and the brujos, who nobody messes with. All you got to do is say you're a brujo, and if you aren't, you're damned to hell for all eternity, so why would you? But they do a lot of calling in the dead and using the dead as servants. They're not zombies. They're just dead spirits they captured. But you can have an allyship with people who loved you or you cared about. Or when I was, and I didn't, when I was younger, I had a really good friend in Boy Scouts, and he died. And I did a ritual, and he was kind of bored on the other side, my take is. So I said, I could really use some help over here. So for about 2 years, Gary just came up all the time whenever I was doing a ritual, and I swear Gary got a lot out of it, and I got a lot out of it, of him making it work better. 12 o'clock to 3:30 in the morning is the best time to contact the dead. Outdoors is more powerful than indoors. Mountaintops are the most powerful place to do magic. Cemeteries ain't bad for contacting the dead. I lived in Oakland for a long time, and I used to walk to the cemetery at midnight, and large people of all ethnic persuasion would cross the street because they were sure if this white boy was walking to the cemetery at 12 at night, he was stark raving mad, or I had a gun in his pocket and was looking for trouble. And I would go to the cemetery in Oakland and do my rituals. And nobody bothered with me ever there because I was scary. You can call them in your living room in New York City. Intent again. Having something that belonged to them is very, very powerful because you have a conduit. Just a picture of them, a memory of them, just remembering the good times and having a conversation like you used to have. It's good to put qualifiers in when you're dealing with allies and dead. If you're doing something more important, if you're going on to another life and can't spare the energy, if doesn't feel right for you, I understand. If you can give me a sign, let me know. It saves me from doing it the 6th time. But if you, it's okay. If this works for you, I would love to have you back in my life on this level. And you call them to them. I've had conversations with people that felt like I was finishing conversations that I wanted to have, but I didn't know they were going to die. It's a good thing. It's a real good thing. And you can do that, You can close up the loose ends, tie up the loose ends, or move the relationship to another level. That's very, very nice. Sorry about that. Meanwhile, back at money.
Were we there?
Death and money, right? We give our power to money every day. in Peru, anyone who's gone there as a tourist had such a different experience than I had from my first time there till now. I bless the people who go down for a weekend, even a long weekend, and spend a bundle of money. Peru needs the money. They have no industry. And they touch the magic. And that some of them have experiences of one sort or another. At least they see it. They bring it back. People go for a week or two. It's great. You get a little bit more. But if you can't be down there for 3 weeks or longer, you don't get to see the people that aren't there out front asking for your money or aren't offering to be your tour guide or aren't. And that's not the majority of the people. That's just the people that realize, okay, there's money here and I can get it that way. And they're even nice people if you get behind it. When I was getting money changed illegally, and the guy cheated me out of $40, my fault, my daughter said, he needed it more than you anyway. She was right. Doesn't happen, to me, it doesn't happen often at all. That was one negative experience. It wasn't that bad. You know, it wasn't the person I would have chosen to get $40, but hey, obviously I did on some level. We give our power away to money every day. They do it in Peru. They don't have any, they don't see any way of getting it. We do it in our job. Do you know that more, and this is a pretty well-known statistic, more U.S. citizens die Monday morning between 8 and 9 than any other time of the week? Their job killed them. They didn't want to go back to work. More older people die right after Christmas and New Year's than any other time of the year. They kept themselves alive for one last holiday. What's important to you? Follow it with all of your energy. When I lived in Oakland, there were immigrants that lived in the street with us. It was in the murder corridor. We all cut our lawns. There were people that had been there for generations, people that had moved in just before me, us. The immigrants rented their houses and owned them in a matter of 5 years. Usually owned a second house, often a business. Why? Because they knew what it was like not to have. They knew what it was like not to have opportunity, not to have money. And they didn't have all of our, I can't because Aunt Mary doesn't like me being a taxi driver. I can't because I have to go to see this movie. I can't because I got to go see Cousin Bill. They just worked 2 or 3 jobs, whatever it took, to get what they wanted. When I started the magazine, and I didn't start alone, there was a lot of us working on it, we worked nights and weekends for 5 years in my living room. And we all worked day jobs and put in our money because we wanted to get a magazine that didn't exist in the world at that point in time out into the world to bring forth this information that would inspire and uplift people. And when it finally hit, everybody had burnt out about 6 months before except for about 3 of us. And the 3 of us gave it everything we want and said, this is it, do or die. And it sold out. And we got to hire all those burnt out people back on and pay them to go to a job. And it was wonderful. You know, if you want something, I've watched a lot of people start magazines, and they usually come from Madison Avenue or from a high-paying medical profession or something, and they go out and they, okay, I've got this loan, or I've got this influx of money, and I'm going to pay myself, you know, $45,000 a year, and it's not all that much. See, I'm not making that much, you know. If I got my paycheck that first year we were in business, I was a really happy man, and I was getting minimum wage. But, you know, you do what you got to do for what you want in life, to draw to you, to create your dreams. It's that way in ritual. It's that way with money. It's that way on every level. It's that way with magic and ritual. What do you want? How much are you willing to experiment, to make mistakes, to bring it to you? There are shamans in Peru. The president of Peru is a shoeshine boy. There are shamans in Peru who fly to the United States 5 and 10 times a week and grew up with their clothes being sewed on them and cut off when they didn't fit anymore and not changing except for those times in their life. And now they're flying in jet planes here. The woman who I met who runs a weaving cooperative who goes to the villages, she speaks Quechuan, Spanish, English, and German. She was flown in by the Smithsonian Institute to help them organize their Andean exhibition. She grew up, her father barely started a store in his village and turned it into a store that could send her and her daughter to college, his sister to college. And now she's being flown to the Smithsonian to advise them. That's magic. That's powerful. When I interviewed her about her beliefs, she said, well, I pray to Mary, or is it Pachamama? I don't know which one I pray to when. Does it matter? And it doesn't. Larry Darcy, who studies prayer, proved that if you pray to a rock with great intent and belief, you can heal someone. More powerful than someone who didn't have someone praying to that rock for them. Magic works. So, what I did was I got a $100 bill out of the bank. Actually, I lied. I'm exaggerating. First time was a dime. I didn't have much money. And I energized it. And I said, this is a symbol of the United States powers, of all the energies I grew up with, of all the things I've been giving my power away to. I am now declaring this my reservoir of power, and I have it to use any way I choose to. And I do that ritual on a regular basis. And when I go to buy things, they say if it's a magical thing, you're not supposed to bargain. Being a business owner, you generally bargain for anything. But I spend money when it makes a difference on someone or me, and it's an important thing, and I don't otherwise. And I have material things, but I don't need them or want them. And they no longer possess me, I possess them. There's a difference, unlike my animals who possess me. There's a difference, there's a real difference. I advise you all to do that ritual, to claim back your power for money. It doesn't matter where you work, I think, having worked at for some real, and I have to use the term assholes, in some really shitty, I worked in a nuclear power plant, I was a fishmonger, I picked oranges in Greece and apples in Maine, I was a field director in a bomber, I bagged, right, kindergarten teacher, I bagged. So I worked for a wide variety of peoples, and some of them were very nice, most of them weren't, because they thought being a supervisor meant you didn't have to, or a business owner meant you couldn't be nice. You can work in that circumstance. My last jerk boss made me a supervisor because he didn't have a chance. I just transformed his energies and made him my friend, ally, and working for me. And he promoted me and advised me for a better job someplace else. He had to get rid of me, but he did it in a royal way. You can do that on any level of mundania or tediousness. It's just not thinking I'm a victim. I have no control. This is a terrible job. I mean, I know a guy who worked in a hotel, was paid beaucoup bucks, died of AIDS, and I'm convinced to this day he died of AIDS because he couldn't leave his job and he hated life. So that's my money ritual.
What about the skulls? Are we going to get to the skulls?
We're going to get to skulls right now. Thank you for asking. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the skulls. And then we'll do some questions of stuff I didn't hit. I didn't get to the second page. We'll have to do another workshop sometime. In Tiwanaku and in the Coca Canyon. And there's a book with the name Machu Picchu in it by a woman who lives in the Sacred Valley. That's yeah, that's it. Cummings? Cummings. Okay. I don't know her. I know she's into labyrinths. But in her book, she talks about having seen these skulls also. Journey to Machu Picchu. Not a bad book. It has some good points. But she tells a story of having seen skulls bigger than a bread box not far from Machu Picchu. I asked for answers, and the creation myth of the Incas is that Viracocha, he's always Viracocha when I bring him up, but Viracocha brought forth from Lake Titicaca the peoples and animals and plants that he would populate the Andes with after the race of giants had died off. And then he brought forth the sun and the rainbow. Well, if you put that up with Velikovsky, the earth went through a huge disaster and moved closer to a sun at a certain point in our history, and the rainbows came. What an interesting coincidence, myth and scientific study. The giants, were they descendants of the Anunnaki? Were they from the Pleiades? Were they a race that lived on the planet because there's been giant remains found all over the planet? I don't claim to know. I have seen the skulls. I do know the skulls are there. Some of them are flat on the side. Some of them are bulged like that you saw. There's some that are even like weird frontal thing.
You didn't do the Japanning?
Yes, it is said, but you know, it's just like the sacrifices. When I read, the Incas did sacrifices. Nothing like the Spanish claimed. Really radical special occasions when nothing else would work or it was dictated by the ancestors. Yeah, some of them use boards. Ask them why. To develop their psychic abilities? That's the closest thing I've heard is a scientific experiment that why they had the boards on, so they could be more telepathic. No. If they did that, then why not just have a whole race of beings that were magical, that were giants, that were from another planet, that lived side by side with us? Tiwanaku, I believe, is 50,000 years old. I'm not an anthropologist or archaeologist, but the people I talk to that I find convincing, the remains that are yet to come forward from the Amazon, I think, will bear this out over time. I think anthropologists and archaeologists are starting to find remains that old, probably even older. Yes?
I had a thought, I keep having this thought come that after the large race may have died off or something, then the kings or the royalty, the people that need to maintain power, want to make themselves look like that older race to control the masses because they are more like them.
Very much so. The myth then comes from the same place. The Incas came from the shores of Lake Titicaca, which is where Tiwanaku is not far from, and only the high Incas, the Sapa Incas, could wear gold earrings. Huge, as you saw the dances last night, huge headdresses that went with it. You know, taller. They even called the Sapa Incas the giants of the Incas. So very much so. We're going to do UFOs just quickly because I put it someplace, so I don't want to not do what I said. Shirley MacLaine made it famous. Nazca lines were not made by people rising up in skins full of hot air. I am convinced of that thoroughly because you can only see the monkey, the spirals and everything from high up. I believe strongly that the Incas, if they were 13 dynasties, didn't create Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Tiwanaku, Fidanza, most of it, that there were races that came before that were influenced, helped by that. They still are coming to the Andes and the Amazon. You can find people in the Amazon and the Andes that will say a lot of things, but they'll say, oh yeah, the ship lands over there, and they come out and visit, you know, on Tuesdays. Huh? One guy in the Amazon told me, the ship crashed over there, and I ate the dead bodies. And I went to another place. I didn't think I would ever come back. It was like the most intense experience I ever had. Well, eating a dead body might do that to you. I haven't gone there. And I'll try almost anything. But fascinating story. They're there. They know the energies are there. They're coming regularly to tap into the energies. The good ones are coming to help us. The bad ones are coming to try to keep it from the information from coming forward. That's my hit on that. Gee, I want to do sex magic, but that takes much more than 10 minutes. Shape-shifting and recapitulation, we'll have to do another time. Yep.
There's a Nazca line that is like a gas burner, as close as I can circle here, 2 little circles here.
Very.
Then in 2000, I'm microlighting over England, and there in my viewfinder
Same.
is the same thing in the
Exactly. Yeah, no, there's been more than one person that's drawn analogies to the Nazca lines. I think, and there's a fellow who wrote a book who isn't here, who was at the UFO conference in San Francisco, whose name might come to me later. And his theory is the best as far as I can see that the Earth's energies in concert, working together with the extraterrestrials created the Nazca lines as guiding posts, both on a higher level of directing them here from other galaxies, other dimensions, and for keeping the energies focused. Because whenever there's an earthquake in Cusco, Coricancha tumbles, except the part the Incas built, which gets stronger. That's what conquering races have always done. They built their cathedrals on top of the old stones. But in this case, the old stones were very strong, and we can't build anything that strong. most of the, if not all, of the crop circles have appeared near holy sites that have, their energies have been grounded or the ley lines can't come through. Voila, a new outlet for the ley line energy onto the planet, helping humanity with its next step in evolution. I'll go on as long as they'll run tape or people will listen.
Blue skulls, crystal skull.
The crystal skull,
Blue crystal skull.
okay, I don't know a thing about it other than it was found.
Well, in Peru.
Yeah,
It supposedly was in Peru. It's the only blue.
yeah. Most of the skulls are found in. Yeah. Do you know who has it?
No.
Okay.
It's down there still.
No, I'm sorry, I don't know. Somebody else asked me the last time I spoke, and I had
Do
to
you know
say.
anything about a village on the shores of Lake Titicaca that still exists that only house the shamans?
No, but there's up in the left-hand corner. You don't have to go far from Puno.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the old part of the Tiwanaku ruins. These huge. They say they were burial crypts. I know of them, and go ahead.
About the School of the Seven Rays?
I don't know. It's been there for hundreds of years since where the shamans go for initiation from
Yeah.
all over Peru.
Yeah.
Tell us what you know.
Well, is it in physical form or does it come in between
Yeah.
I
the
think
worlds?
it's in physical form.
There is one that comes in between the worlds, though. That
Yeah, and there's a physical manifestation of it in that area.
On the
School of
shores of
Seven
Lake
Rays.
Titicaca, I think on the
Yeah.
eastern shore.
Yeah, it holds
I
all
mean, the
the magic. and
Northern,
the
maybe.
mysticism.
I found out about it when I was down
Yep.
there.
They gave me a second tape for you. If you want to
But
go.
okay? People want to go on? Are we tired? We had enough. There's other people. Okay.
There's actually another workshop here.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So questions then.
Another workshop till 4:30.
Anyway,
No, there's a lecture.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got an idea about the quipus, actually.
Yes.
I have studied them in the Quipucamayos, which they're, the lore is there aren't any remaining Quipucamayos.
Right.
My thought is it's sort of like a library in terms of how it holds the information. If you walk into the library and you just say, I want to look for this book, unless you use one of your allies, you may never find it. But if you get the ISBN number, you can actually access that book. And I'm pretty confident, at least in my own tracking of the quipus,
Makes
that
perfect sense.
they'll actually give you a grid location. So, they're multi-dimensional in that sense, and they'll actually take you to a certain
Makes
place.
perfect sense.
And you can actually read the numbers and it's a time and space coordinate system in a way, although it exists outside of time and space.
Wow.
Have you also heard about Terence McKenna? You would say that the elves really like knots because they can only exist in third dimensional reality, and so it's like they like it when people make knots.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
In the ancient
And I've also
in the ancient lore, the knotting is related to the core of the galaxy. It's both fusion and fission simultaneously. So it's related to Tula in the Mayan cosmology and the hidden sun and the Inti Taita and the gods and goddesses behind Inti Taita.
I hadn't taken it that far, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, I know that there's shamanic energies. You can put a thought form on something, and someone else can come by who's somewhat sensitive and just pick up the thought form. So it would make sense that the knots would be used that way and more. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Just go, I'm sure they're just record keepers. You just go get the file wherever
Right.
it's at.
What the Tibetans would call the Ashikik record.
Absolutely.
You'd go out. It's pronounced differently. Yes. Yeah, the language is ours to use as we choose, as is life. My message, is just don't let your fears get in your way. In Peru, the places I found the best people and the best experiences were the ones that, I was scared as hell to go to. And only one of them almost killed me. Much easier than Mexico. In Mexico, it happened a lot. You are the masters of your destiny. You are the shamans and the magic workers of your life. What you bring to every moment and what you do has an effect on everything. We came to do right what they did wrong in Lemur and Atlantis and other lost civilizations. And And all the signs are we're going to get it right. But how easy it is and how painful it is between now and then, and how many people we love and aren't quite suffer and die is really up to us. We can't beat ourselves up if it doesn't work. It wasn't my fault George Bush got reelected. But I'm trying really hard to love the man. And that's the kind of thing we have to do, is put that energy out there and believe in the best and expect the best and set the heavens. And it's all out there for the asking. You know, when I don't know my next step in spiritual growth or magic development, I ask and a book falls off the shelf or someone sends me something and damn if it isn't always the perfect thing. Yes?
George didn't have the powwow to set good results, did he?
Which George?
George Bush. He must
Oh.
have had the powwow to get a good outcome.
I don't know. He had some sort of powwow. He got what he wanted, but
I'm talking about in Iraq.
no, not yet. But I'm not sure George isn't using magic. I just think he runs it around his heart. I'm not sure. Thank you all for coming. I hope I gave you something. My pleasure. Yes.
Are you running someplace?
I'm not running any place. I'm here.
Could you go again?
Yes, gladly. And it did. I've actually confused a couple people because I go fast, and basically, if you make a decision. You make a decision which side is your past, and then you